The New York Islanders have made multiple moves assigning two quality prospects to the AHL to further along their NHL development, and a lot of fans are scared about this because the Islanders AHL team has been absolutely abysmal this season. It's really hard to express just how bad the Islanders AHL team has been over the past few seasons, and as a result, a lot of fans are concerned that this is hampering player development. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest, but before we do that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, be one of our first 100 subscribers. If you're an Islander fan and you want more Islanders content like this is the channel for you. Let's get right into the news. The Islanders have assigned Gleb Veremyev, an undrafted college forward who just signed a 2-year entry-level contract, and Jesse Pulkkinen, a defenseman who they drafted in the second round last season to the AHL. They will both be playing in the AHL for the remainder of this season. And on one hand, this is always exciting. It's always exciting to see how prospects jump from lower levels to professional hockey. AHL hockey is not NHL hockey, but it's some of the best hockey around, and seeing how these players step up and really find roles in the AHL is always exciting for a fan in terms of prospects. However, it's a little bittersweet when it comes to the Islanders because the Islanders AHL team is so abysmal. It's so genuinely bad that there's a lot of concern that bad habits and bad mentality can rub off on these players. There's also a lot of concern that the system is not doing a great job developing these players, and we're going to really break that down on this episode of Islanders Digest because I don't think it's as bad as people think. But before we get into that, I really want to talk about these two players and what their potential can be on the Islanders, and then we'll get into the AHL system. So the first player we have to talk about is Gleb Veremyev. They just signed him, one of the top college undrafted free agents. Really happy the Islanders acquired him. This is a player who's really big, 6'4", 200 pounds, really strong, and he takes a lot of faceoffs. He's considered to be a faceoff specialist, and yeah, this is a really exciting player to have in the prospect system. 2 seasons ago, he had 28 points on the college level. Last season, he had a step back, only having 17. But this is the type of player who provides so much more than points, and this is why I'm so excited about him. I think some fans are looking at those point totals and shrugging. Let me tell you, this guy is a guy who hits really hard, and he forechecks really well. This is exactly what you want out of a fourth liner, and he does have a bit of finish in addition. So all those 3 things, this is the type of player you want on your team as a fourth liner. The Islanders really do need, I think, to revamp that fourth line a bit. It has been better as of late. This is the type of player who can really help you get that type of play that you want from your fourth line. That Casey Cizikas, Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck type of play. And the Islanders know just how valuable a solid fourth line can be, and he is a huge piece in building that. I don't think he's going to be NHL ready next season. I think he needs another full season in the AHL, and that might concern a lot of fans, but I definitely think he might step in next season if there are a couple injuries on center. That being said, I definitely think he can make the Islanders the season after that, and I am looking forward to seeing how he develops in the AHL. A little nervous, especially considering how the Islanders AHL system has been, but I do think that issue has been overhyped. Next, I want to talk about Jesse Pulkkinen because this is a player who the Islanders drafted last season, so it's definitely good to check up on him, see how he's doing. I think he's going to definitely benefit a lot from this little look in the AHL, perhaps even more than Veremyev. This is a player who I don't think has quite taken the next step in his program in Finland. The Islanders drafted him, and I think he was a really good draft choice at where they selected. And there was a lot of talk about him being able to grow into a more offensive defenseman. This is a defenseman who has shown a lot of solid defense, but he has a lot of creative abilities, and the way he sees the ice, there was hope that he would really grow his offensive game this season in Finland. That didn't happen. Last season, he had 8 points. This season, again, he had 8 points. And I don't think this is too concerning. Some fans are going to look at this and be like, oh, he's not developing. When it comes to defensemen, there's a lot more to develop than just scoring points. He can definitely grow in his more defensive game, which is definitely important. I just think it'll be really good to see him get a new look on a new team in the Islanders AHL system and really see how he compares to some of the other defensemen the Islanders had drafted in the second round, like Cal Odulus and Isaiah George. Isaiah George, who we saw this season and looked pretty good. I think this is a player who will definitely get a good look this season in the AHL and will definitely have a bigger role in the Islanders AHL system. And honestly, the Islanders have now put together a pretty solid defensive core of prospects in their minor league system. I know fans will say, well, the team is terrible, so how good can these players be? And as we'll talk about later, I don't think that's quite indicative of, even though they have better prospects than people believe they do, And I don't think the AHL team's success is really on them. But let's get right into it and talk about what's wrong with this AHL team, because something is clearly wrong, because the Islanders AHL team is struggling. And when I say struggling, they are struggling. They've played 62 games this season. They've won 14 of them. They've won 14 games. To make it worse, it's not even a situation where they're just losing a lot of games in overtime, where they're blowing leads like the actual Islanders were doing earlier in the season and last season. They've lost 41 games in regulation. This is absurdly bad. This AHL team is really, really struggling. They can't seem to put anything together, and this is definitely concerning for the Islanders. This is not a good record at all. 14 wins is quite horrendous. But I do want to point out, earlier on in the season, when the Islanders were really struggling because so many defensemen were injured, a lot of defensemen on this team, like Grant Hudden, Isaiah George, they all stepped up, and as a result, they were not available to the team. Samuel Bulldog, even though he wasn't playing in all those games, he was called up, so they also could not use him during those games. And I definitely think that hurt this AHL team, especially missing Isaiah George for that long. That being said, that is not an excuse, because there really is no excuse when it comes to only winning 14 games. That being said, does that mean that this is a terrible system for developing prospects and Brent Thompson should be fired? I'm not so sure about that. While I do think the Islanders should spend more time getting better players to play in their AHL system, I don't think this is indicative of their prospect pool, and I'm really going to talk about why right now as we go through some of these players. One thing I think is really important to note is not all the players playing in the AHL are necessarily Islanders prospects. Some players like Chris Cherry are career AHLers, and I think that is definitely where this team struggles the most. The Islanders do not seem to really focus in the offseason on acquiring career AHL players who can really make their AHL team better. I think they rather focus on having their prospects slide into those roles, and as a result, their AHL teams really struggle offensively and sometimes defensively as these players make mistakes as they try to learn the game. That being said, on the other hand, they also have more opportunities and more chances to really learn from their mistakes. So it is kind of an interesting balance, and I really want to focus on both sides of it, because we've seen a couple players from this AHL team play in the NHL in the past few seasons. Last season, we got to look at a couple players, including Ruslan Ishakov, before he went to play in the KHL. And he's doing pretty well in the KHL. A lot of fans were also upset that he left and was not playing here again. I think it was better for him to move to play in the KHL. But really focusing here, we've seen a couple of these players, especially this season. We've seen Isaiah George, and in his small NHL sample size, he actually did a really good job. And in addition, players like Grant Hudden, who really are not projected to be NHL players, when they need to step up, when the Islanders have a lot of injuries, they are able to play pretty well in an NHL system. So I'd actually argue that this AHL team is doing a pretty good job in doing its main job, which is getting players ready to contribute to the Islanders. Now, you'd like to see them win more games, but if we really look at the Islanders roster, last season Kyle McLean came up from the AHL and he really had a good impact. This season, Gatcomb is coming up from the AHL, and he's had a really good impact for the Islanders, and he's going to be really crucial on their fourth line if they're going to make the playoffs down the stretch. When Hogberg needs to come up and play for the Islanders, he played really well. So whenever players do come up and play on the Islanders, I know Samuel Bolduc did not play that well, but I think that is more an issue on him as a player than the system in total. The system does seem to do a pretty good job at developing players. And you can make the argument that maybe the reason they're not winning is just the Islanders have not been drafting in the first round, other than Simon Holmstrom, who actually did go through this AHL system and looks really good as a well-rounded player. We really have not put that many first-round picks in this AHL system. And as a result, I think that is really why they're struggling. Now, the counter argument you can make, even though there are players who are coming up and playing good, there are also players, big prospects, who really have not developed the way people hoped. I think a big example of that is Mathew Barzal, who is really struggling in the AHL this season, only has 17 points in 52 games. And while I do think it's concerning that Mathew Barzal is struggling, I definitely was higher on him a season ago. I don't think that's necessarily Brent Thompson or this team being bad's fault. I think a big reason for that is Mathew Barzal simply has not been able to take another step up as a player. And I think one reason why Islander fans were so high on him and they're now disappointed is back when Mathew Barzal was hyped as one of the Islanders' top prospects, this prospect pool was completely barren. And as a result, I think there was just too much pressure put on him. I don't necessarily think this AHL system is bad, just because Matthew Barzal is not playing well. So yes, I don't think it's good that this AHL team is struggling. I definitely do have my concerns. I'm not really concerned about the Islanders bringing players into this system to really develop them, as they've done such a good job with other players, especially in these roles. You can make the argument that they simply don't have upper end talent in this system to really develop. And that's not a problem because it doesn't mean the Islanders don't have upper end talent. They have players like Caleb Ritchie and Cole Eiserman who simply are not playing in the AHL. So the Islanders prospect pool, just because they're not playing in the AHL, it doesn't mean they're bad. I think this AHL team is actually doing a really good job of developing. For the past few years, it's really felt like they've been a defensive factory, bringing out solid defensemen after solid defensemen. And I think this is definitely going to continue with players like Isaiah George and Cale Audulus. I just don't think, considering all this, while it would be nice for them to win more games, I don't think it's that detrimental for the Islanders. I'm not concerned about the Islanders prospects moving to play in this AHL team. That being said, let me know what you think. I know a lot of fans are really concerned about the Islanders AHL team, so I'd love to know your thoughts on it on the comments. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel, and as always, let's go Islanders.